religions. But the micro-identities of groups from MAGA is a group that runs on what? They use
illegal. Like this shit is
religion for their agendas. And people surrender what they need to know and what they need to learn as this is the moral code. Because you can see how many divisions of Christianity are there, as well as other religions. How many divisions of parties are there but really get heard? So when John says, as if he's a person who doesn't believe in religion and says, I want to use science, okay, well, science is an applied evaluation. You know, it's testing whether theories and facts and how proper narrative and how conclusive it is. But see, the problem is that when people misrepresent something and then use it for their agenda, are they really speaking in the way that it's intended? You were saying something, Marshall?
What's that? I didn't realize I want to hear the end of that.
Well, where I'm going with that is we run on systems that lead sheep to wolves. That's basically it. There's more wars created out of religion than any other thing in the world. Like, who grew up in the 80s? Who was taught about communism, right? And it was they're savages, they're zealots, they're gonna destroy what's wholesome and ethical. To go into the 90s, you have Gulf War. Well, we've got to hate the Muslims, and we've got to do these agenda things, and we've got to participate. We've got to ally with things that will attack our sovereignty here. But it's like at the end of the day, it's usually rooted in business ideas that cover themselves in rhetoric of religion or political identity. So are we really attacking the issue? Is MAGA really the problem or just a symptom?
I mean, that's what I was saying earlier, right? Like, maximize profit is the problem, right? Religion is used to galvanize people that feel more than think. But the problem is maximize profit.
Well, I want to be careful because I don't think religion is the only group that does that. As I think, am I the only Black person on this stage? Science.
One person who happens to have melatonin density.
Advance extremely damaging philosophies about different groups throughout history. I think I want to be careful not to limit this and simplify it down to religion being the source of this, as much as greed, as much as any force that can unify or can be wielded into a cudgel has the capacity to create harm. And as a society, we have the responsibility to each other to limit that as much as possible. And I think what we're seeing in our present age is there are no limits, right? Like there are absolutely no limits to the greed and the extraction that we are willing to allow to happen. And so whether it's religion, whether it's been science, whether it's been business, whether it's been technology is its own kind of idol that has been raised up, that has the capacity to create harm, because you're just supposed to say AI is amazing. You're not supposed to question it, right? You're not supposed to challenge it. You're just supposed to swallow it whole. We have this notion of sheep and wolves is the problem, and these tools, they vary across industries and sectors and all kinds, but the central problem, I think, is unfettered, unlimited greed.
And I'm with you here, Denise. I mean, Nazis in the 30s had the best of science and technology. They were the most advanced culture on the planet, and it created unbelievable. So that's where I disagree with my different. I don't think religion is the problem. I think institutionalism is the problem. I mean, I think communal authority is the problem. But there's no way around it, right? I mean, on some level, you need these kinds of things to have a society. If you want to send your kids to school, or you want to go to Starbucks, these kinds of things.
I'm just going to say like one thing, and then I want Christina to like have 5 minutes, right? You're right that science was used by the Nazis as part of their propaganda, part of their machine. That's how we get eugenics, right? The eugenics, I think, was an American idea that came from Germany. Yeah, and so, but the innovation of the Nazis was that they used both. They used both eugenics and science, and they used religion, Catholicism in particular. So, I mean, Denise is right that these tools can be used as weapons, and often are, depending on what the situation is. Currently, science is used as a weapon in terms of technology, right? The AI system that targeted the girls' school in Iran was that. But then a lot of people in the military are being told that they're fighting a holy war. And so again, it's the use of both with people whose only purpose is maximizing profit.
I want to flatten this for a second so that we can then unfold it, unfurl it, and part of that is like
Allah belanı versin. Allah belanı versin. Çocukların yetiminden düştük. Anan orospu olsun, baban kanat olsun. Demek teröristlere eskisi.
Guy needs to be escorted. I think he wanted to be thinking.
So back to what I was attempting to say is I think like power, in order to have power, any flavor of it, you have to break the continuum of existence on the planet. You got to break it into categories and immediately like create a scarcity, right? Who has power and who doesn't? That immediately creates a hierarchy. As soon as you've got hierarchy, then you can start to control, exploit, extract from it, and then you can create systems that perpetuate this, whether they are formal, like government, education, etc., or whether they're cultural and narrative of who belongs in which boxes, or whether they are even through the powers of science and determining that we must categorize them according to species, phylum, family, genus. I don't know what I'm talking about, but this kind of thing. And when we start to categorize and rank things in this way, we forget about the relationships between things, because it's easier to control and to value what is important and what is important, whose voice, what animal, what plant is valid, which one is invalid, except that there is no CEO of the jungle, there is no CEO of the planet. It is this interwoven, multi-layered, multi-dimensional, feedback looping, living organism made up of many internal organisms and systems within systems and systems and so on. I'm getting feedback somewhere. And so this when power, in order to facilitate what it does, it tells us that humans are only this way. We must have hierarchy. It tells us that humans must exist in this particular way to have civilization. But if that's true, then like it sucked the life out of how the fractal existence of the planet, right? Systems within systems. Our bodies between one another, within the ecosystem of the desert, the mountains, whatever, and then the ecosystem of the planet. That is fractal scaling that does not require a linear hierarchy in order to scale, in order to exist. It doesn't have to have someone at the top operating it, but that's what power tells us. This is default human, us versus them, right? This is mega, this is this little group, it's this person to blame. When like if you break fractally down the element of like we've internalized the beliefs that power has told us to believe, and we perpetuate them, and then that's the lens we see everything else through. When we are it's self and peer perpetuating of the power stories that continue to hold it in place, right? When it's really fragile, because you cannot co-opt the planet. You cannot co-opt the natural ecosystems because they're resilient and adaptive because of their fractal existence. But you can do it with power.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Shaq.
Thank you. I think that on the ways they were societal. Like the Jews had the religion of the Jewish tribe, the Zoroastrians were like that was the religion of the Persians, right, of the community. So they carry with them like what we call ancient wisdom, proverbs, things like this to run the society. And Pastor Scott is right that you can't really like have function in a society without a set of rules and a set of traditions that sort of like teach people, the next generation, how to organize themselves and how to operate and how to get along and to give them aspirations and hope. I know that today people have always done it, warred between tribes, but I think it's part of the human nature to create a collection of people, to create tribal systems where you can trust other people, and that is the way in which people have historically done it. Today we have in modern society, nation states, we have socialist, what we call secular philosophy, and all of these things. A lot of it's abstracted from religions, right? Maybe that's the way early humans just sort of organized themselves to quote unquote civilize themselves. And there are people who are trying to live out historical realities today, historical religious aspects today. As far as hierarchies go, that even in institutions or countries like the Soviet Union, where they try to destroy religion, also in China, modern day China, where they limit religion significantly, they still have hierarchical systems. A lot of it is based on intelligence. Take these particular tests, who the government deems as worthy of certain things. It's about a lot of control. They only have one party, at least as far as the Chinese government goes. So I think that these are still things that you can try to minimize, but as long as there are people who have any sort of hope or desires of their own, it will come up. I guess the question is how to maximize the amount of cooperation between humans and minimize the amount of dissatisfaction between humans.
I think that's really interesting, and both what you said and what Christina said has me sitting here thinking about this notion of talking about MAGA as a group, talking about a group of people as a source of harm, and does that limit or advance the conversation? And I don't know. I'm thinking about that.
Can you say that again?
I think there's this desire. I'm personally torn. On one hand, there's like, listen, you need to not be afraid to name an agent of harm, right? And if you see there is this group of people that is creating this kind of reality, navigating this space in this way that has this outcome, then it is entirely appropriate to address them in that way. And then also the other side of, by putting people in a bucket, by labeling them, are we advancing the problem? Are we codifying or solidifying the problem and making it worse? I don't know. I'm sitting here really, really kind of thinking about that. We have no problem saying the KKK is the KKK and it creates harm. At the time, the KKK had a contemporary experience with people, and somebody would have said at that time, well, you shouldn't lump them all in the same bucket. That's what they would have said at the time, because the harm was justified by quite a few people. So is there value in naming, or are we harming the conversation by you're demonizing?
Well, there's an inherent danger with labeling, because I know in the UK that we have a Muslim people that are all being labelled together. I mean, I get accused of being a liberal. Well, are all liberals bad? I might just have a different political opinion. So I think it's inherently dangerous lately.
We need to know them by their fruits. Know them by their fruits. Their actions tell you who they are.
I think it's really important. Like what Denise said gets right at the heart of what just makes me want to rip what remaining hair I have on my head out of it when I listen to so many people, even on MSNBC and others, kind of treating things as if we are in a business as usual kind of a thing. Normalizing MAGA, making this insane situation. And it is, we have to at least be willing to stand up and say, this is insane. The person that we have leading this country is clearly a sociopath who gives not a shit about America. Nobody with a functioning neuron in their brain can fail to see that. And yet 30%, 40% of Americans fail to see that. Somebody needs to stand up and say, somebody in a position of power, the news media, whatever, needs to stand up and say, this is fucking insane. You don't just stand around saying, oh, well, the next midterm will take care of it. Don't you see what the fuck is happening? Did anybody read the news this week? Even in here, I hear people saying the Democrats are going to win the election. Of course they'll win the election. That isn't the question. The question is, will they take power? And of course they won't. Come on, wake the fuck up.
But John, the Democrats have won special elections, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I think fundamentally, we're on the precipice. But I do think the crazy thing is there are reasonable. I mean, people vote for Trump for reasons, right? And I think some of it's identitarianism, some of it's, he's put together a coalition. Some of it's taxes, some of it's energy interests, some of it's. So I don't think. I think it's a messier story than you're narrating, and I don't know, and I don't know what the options. Is the evolution, John? Are you saying like we should violently revolt like January 6th?
So I do think that this will come to bloodshed. I really, really do think that you will see. This is, I have been on this message now for a year and a half, if not more. And as far as I can see, every brick I have predicted is falling into place. It's very clear the Republicans have no intention of giving up power, and it's very clear why. They cannot ever again not be in power. Imagine the bloodbath of convictions and sentences that will happen if the Republicans are ever again not in power. And that means that they will do whatever it takes, and they have the power to do whatever it takes. Trump has his SS. He has it in place. It's massively funded. I do believe that that if there is any resistance to what they intend to do, certainly in 2028, if not in 2026, and I suspect in 2026 as well, they can't afford to lose a House of Congress. I do believe that if there's any resistance to what they do, it will lead to bloodshed. And so, to keep violence, no, but I don't see any way back to normalcy that happens just because we say, oh, there's elections coming, just come on, wake up.
I agree with you. Okay. Really. So I just want to say structurally, I think it's not as sinister as you laid out, John. I think structurally, the problem is the demographics of the country. I think we have a system with the Electoral College and the Senate, or we majority of public opinion, but you can have a structural majority. I think the future, politically, for the near future, looks like Democrats take the House, and we can perpetually get the House. And longer and longer in the future, we can't take the Senate, which is where the real power happens, right? Or the presidency, because we can't get the Electoral College. So I think if this was a simple majority sort of system, like a Westminster parliamentary system, the left would win, and we would stop all of this. But we don't have that kind of system. We live in a system that the founders set up, has all these weird checks and balances, and enables states. You know, I mean, Montana has no people, right? It's 750,000 people or something, and their senator has as much power as a senator from California. So we don't really live. I mean, we do live in a republic that has elections, and I do believe our elections are free and fair. But
just quickly this, and then I will shut up for a while. I think, so you make me think, okay, what am I advocating? What I'm advocating is getting people prepared for the bloodshed that I think is inevitable. This is going to come to bloodshed, and the longer we resist talking about how fucking insane the situation we're in is, the harder it's going to be to get people up for the violence that is in our future.
So I actually agree with John. I think that the passive nature of the center left is going to kill the center left. And I think that because as far as somebody who's looking at politics, I think that America has a problem in that it has four parties, and it doesn't really know that it has four parties. It has MAGA, it has the Republicans, people that used to be like normal Republicans, it has like normal Democrats, and then you have the far left who are sort of eating up the Democratic Party, and that is part of the reason why the Democrats in some cases are losing, because they have two factions within the Democratic Party that are basically fighting for resources and priorities. And I think that John is right. The more that as time goes by, the MAGA people, whoever's running the show back there, they are working to weaken the civil liberties of America and the electoral system, and all of these things that make America America, and people won't have any power. I think the solution is, because I don't think it's too late, I do think the solution is that people need to start actually engaging with people on the opposite side, like on the street, not just in the House and the Senate. I mean, the Americans need to American again, right? They need to understand what their rights are, who they're fighting for, and black and white people of different whatever backgrounds, whatever factions they come from, need to all come to the table and say we need to become Americans again.
Well, in order to get to that, hold on, I was waiting. I think that it keeps going back and forth to the same teeter-totter. You don't find balance. I agree with some points of what Shai said, is how do you get a population to be able to evaluate people over party, right? Religion, moral ethics versus, what is within the realm of the Constitution. Parts of the Constitution is being shown how it's broken. It needs to be reformed in some people's lives and not in others. But it's like, I elect somebody, like I'm in California, right? There's 62 people running for them, and only 8 are being seen based on party funding and a viewability on commercials that outwardly lie. And then you get MAGA, where you have a president who lies so freaking much. But then there's some things I agree that he did that, you broke it on purpose. You showed how it was broken. But we just don't like looking in the mirror. I can't go forward with parties because they don't represent always the points of view. It's like, well, if you don't vote for one, the last election, as people say, well, see what you get. You had to decide between Kamala and Trump. Were they they were being funded and to be able to promote underpinned ethics that might lead the whole country. See, I look at somebody who I like to, how can you look at the other person on the other side and not just grandstand and wait till you get power? That leads us into demise. Plato wrote about that in the Republic, but do people teach about that? No, you got to go look for it on your own. I'll stop there.
Well,
John,
John,
should be required, I think, for.
David, let's let David have a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no worries. Well, if we look at the outcome that happened in the great state of Indiana, 5 of 7 incumbents were primaried out by Donald Trump because they didn't want to take his marching orders and gerrymander the state, and so he found candidates that would do that. And I heard a piece on this whole scenario. These were small town voting markets, where in some of these areas, these districts, you're talking about 20,000 voters, and they pumped $13 million in to primary these guys. So, this is what we're up against. This was not any form of the playbook that the Constitution envisioned, or, the amount of money that gets poured into these things. So if they're able to do that in Indiana, well, Republicans around the country are seeing the outcome of this. And so, Trump got 5 victories. He didn't get the pro tem guy out of the state house, but he got 5. And so, and $13 million bought him a lot of power there. So that's what's happening in this country with Trump at the helm. And you saw what he did with Texas, and that's a big state, right? My state had to respond in kind, and it's a train wreck. We're headed toward a political
Your
system.
state did not have to respond in kind. Just because my state alienated its Democratic voters doesn't mean your state needs to alienate its Republican voters.
Well, at least they let them vote on it. The Senate voted on it.
Thank you.
Texas, they just did it, and
Right.
but this is the challenge, right? Like, it's so asymmetric. We grade Democrats on a curve. We grade Republicans on a curve. I mean, it's like you're just supposed to stand and take a beating when the other side is cheating. And only one side seems to be perpetually evaluated on their behavior and their course of action. And that makes me insane. It's like, listen, you have to have a consistent value set that everybody is graded on, right? Swalwell got, they identified that he was being sexually inappropriate. He was gone in hours.
Al Franken.
Right? Like, Al Franken. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't have one side that has to operate under the rules. One of the most poignant memory I have of the election was when Donald Trump said that the immigrants that were in Ohio were eating the cats and dogs. And I don't think I'll ever forget that, because it was like, here is this blatant lie that led to so much harm. They had to close schools. They had to, literally, HBCUs got death threats and it was crazy, the consequence of that lie. And there was absolutely no penalty. There was nothing that ever happened. These are the people that are in charge of us. And if there's no requirement, if we're not going to hold people accountable when they do even the most basic creation of clear harm, then how can you expect anybody to trust you? And how do we create future citizens that believe in the rule of law and that believe in character? I'm not saying that, I'm looking for saints, but we cannot continue to elevate sinners and put the worst of us in charge and the worst of us on the covers of magazines. You know, we look at the names that we're seeing as the most influential, the Joe Rogans, the Andrew Tates, the Elon Musk. Like, we have a character problem here. Like, to literally, I heard somebody say the other day, well, even if Trump is a pedophile, it's not a big deal. My grandmother was married at 14. And I was like, what are we doing? That's the problem. Like, it can't be about party. It has to be about some kind of fundamental character.
And Denise, I'm fundamentally with you here, but when this happened with Clinton, when there was serial abuse, I mean, Clinton had rape charges and things that came out, and we circled the wagons. I mean, Maureen Dowd. I mean, we top public opinion.
I agree 1,000%. You're not going to hear me, like, you know, people always say, well, what if Bill Clinton is in the Epstein files? Tar and feather him, put him under the jail and set him on fire. I do not care. I don't feel like that. That's not how I think about this. I think that you have to decide that what kind of country you're going to have. And we can't be happy of what we're having right now.
But we allow Bill Clinton to be in public life and to be in, you know, run around at TED conferences and to be at, you know.
You're not disagreeing with anything I've said. I agree 100%.
I'm just saying. So how do we excise Bill Clinton from public life?
I don't think Bill Clinton is a decision maker that we need to be worried about right now.
Oh
I
my
agree.
God! No, I mean,
listen to me. Listen to what I just said. I think he needs to be gone. That's we agree 100%. I don't think Bill Clinton has a chainsaw on stage cutting a U.S. aid and killing 1 million people. That's not what. Like, I you're right, but it's like, let's keep the topic at hand. We have an emergency situation. And so I think it's great to talk about Bill Clinton. Okay, I agree. So how does that help us with what we need to be doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I
agree with Denise.
Yeah, what we need to be doing right now, I mean, look, I mean, I don't know what we do right now, because I think fundamentally the revolutionary perspective is interesting. I think the Democrats take the midterms. I think that will just be attrition. I mean, we will lose the war of attrition. What will happen is we'll get in, and we won't have the Senate, and we won't have the presidency. So there's very limited things you can do. You can hold a lot of hearings. And I think that's basically what the win in the midterms will lead to. It's just hearings.
I mean, I think that we're kind of doing what we're supposed to be doing, right? I think that, you know, engaging in the political process as the public, as the fourth wall of government, as I believe the public is to engage in the political process and to encourage more Americans to engage with the political process more. Also, like, this is part of our job.
Well, when we had serious crises of decision making, like this Iran thing could go ugly really fast. And when we went down to Southeast Asia and started cowboying against the Vietnamese, it took the conscription of everybody's child, the threat of that, the upper and middle class kids, for people to really get out there and change and march and force the agenda to change. We're at a point now where our voting doesn't help. Our elected Democratic officials can't check this guy. The Supreme Court, 6 people in robes masquerading as decision makers and policy makers, not deciders of law, are also against it. So we have a hugely stacked deck against all the processes that our founding fathers put in place. And I've never seen it this bad. And unless Americans really take to the streets, not show up to work, economic boycotts, these are some of the things that the civil rights movement leveraged down in the Deep South to really cripple. When black folks didn't show up to work and didn't ride those buses and stuff, that had serious impact on those policymakers. And we're coming to a point now where, and violence isn't the answer. Violence is not the answer. Violence will only further destabilize, create reactionary, the full weight of the federal military power on our streets. We don't want that. It will not work. There's no civil war that's going to happen the way the North and the South was fought out. That's not ever going to happen again. You might have these flare-ups, but for the most part, I mean, we're just sitting here waiting out the clock until we can go punch a voting ballot to try to excise this cancer. And the midterms might take it down from stage 4 to stage 3. But when you still have stage 3 cancer, it's pretty bad. You can still die from that. So, I don't know. I just think that, a lot of us that are immune to the gas prices, immune to these big these big Iranian blowbacks, a lot of Americans can't handle it. They're not handling it very well. They're choosing between gas and groceries. And now grocery prices are going up.
And medicine.
And this is now, forget that we voted for Kamala. The MAGA people didn't vote for this. And if it were not for the fact that they identify, you and I talked about this, Scott. They go with identity over their pocketbook. They're like in church saying, Jesus is going to come again and save us. Well, he's not going to save you. It's like the old theory, the old story where the preacher says, I sent you a boat. The guy's drowning in the river. He sends a boat. He sends a helicopter. And then the guy finally drowns. He says, I was waiting for you to save me, God. Well, I sent you all these things. And you didn't take it.
Yeah, and Dave, you and I have talked about this incessantly, but I think if it's identity versus ideas, identity wins every time. Because I don't think ideas are that compelling. I think once in a while, if you're in crisis, an idea will win. But in general, identity trumps ideas every single time. And I
don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
And also, I think that we should encourage people to identify as Americans and have the conversation about what America is.
Exactly. My identity, I don't want people in West Virginia to be starving or to be on meth and have to choose between their food and their diabetes medicine. It doesn't matter that I don't live in West Virginia, right? I don't feel like that at all.
No, but it's more pernicious than that, right? In that, Pew has done studies on this, and people's political identity now matters to them more than their racial identity or their gender identity. That's the number one thing. What team are you on? And so when we think about political ideas, we don't think about ideas, right? I mean, let's take school choice, for instance. It's the one idea my mind was changed on. I've been a leftist my whole life, but I was hired to do public policy research on something, and I read all of the literature. I read all of the literature. Yeah, mute up, David. So I read everything on the issue, and I was just fundamentally wrong. I mean, I realized that I was on the wrong side of the argument, but that's a tough thing. I mean, I don't think most people can do that. I think most people, identity wins over ideas 95% of the time, because
I think that's the biggest challenge that the Democrats have, is that they have to be a bigger tent because there's actual diversity in the party. And so there's compromises that have to be made all the time that are even against your personal pet issue in order to advance this kind of bigger tent application. So I just disagree. I don't think that's true. I think that yes, people are very, very committed and very keenly connected to their identity. Of course, but I just don't think that's.
Denise, what's the last big idea you changed your mind on? Like something that was against your tribe. I mean, like for me, one of them was nuclear power. The other was school choice. I think I've looked at ideologically my own ideological toolbox and changed my mind a few times. I don't think most people do that. And I've done it maybe twice in my life. I think in general, we're tribal people. And I think part of the reason we're losing is that identity wins over ideas every single time.
I think you can change tribes, though. I think that's part of the issue, right? And I'm a Black American who I think that part of the issue is looking as some ways an outsider, and because of my current location. But I think that part of the issue is that people that as far as this racial politics go in America, I think Black and white people need to start to talk together. And I think that people need to start talking to the ex-MAGA people, right? There are a lot of ex-MAGA people out there who are leaving the fold of MAGA, and I think there are a lot more people who want to but have nowhere to go. And I think people really need to engage with those people and see who they are and what they really want to happen. Like I think that in 2026, the world is a lot less racist than it was 40 years ago or 60 years ago for sure. And I think that people really need to start like engaging with that and not stay out of their silos and become the Americans. And instead of like being overly fixated on like maintaining a particular racial type of purity.
Yeah, well, something happened to this country, and I hate to take us back there, but something happened when Barack Obama became president. On the one hand, he broke the barrier, but it's how he broke the barrier that needs to be talked about. And one of the ways he broke the barrier was he didn't shame white voters for the sins of racism, the sins of slavery. He didn't throw that in their face every time he was on the campaign trail. But once he got into office, once white folks saw, well, we got a Black man in charge, then you saw the warts, you saw the history, you saw all the racism that these settlers, that these descendants of the settler class, the white settler class that came to this country, you saw that those memories, that hatred, that deep-seated disdain for Black leadership at that level. And it came out in all sorts of ways. And Kamala Harris, unfortunately, had to message around all this shit, all of this history, and try to sell her ideas and message. But she still was a Black woman telling white racist Americans, not everybody in America is racist, so don't take my words and twist them. But she had to say, I need your vote in order to keep a guy like Donald Trump from getting back into the White House. And all these folks say, oh, by the way, oh no, we don't. You're gonna throw trans issues down our throat. You're gonna throw welfare issues down our throat. You're gonna throw women's rights to some extent. I don't want my wife, whatever the case may be. And instead, we're gonna pick this grifter to run the country again. Not only that, we're gonna give him 75 million votes. That's the state of our nation, unfortunately. And that was identity. That all came down to identity on some level. And let's say you take out a third and say maybe it was about taxes, maybe it was about the economy, and the rest was about, all these other issues. But they couldn't trust that Kamala Harris wasn't going to somehow use her power and ram these other issues down their throat, which is the talking points and the fear that the campaign sowed under Trump.
See, but ultimately, that's not why she lost. She lost because she she tied herself. She lost because she tied herself as a candidate of the status quo, where Trump, despite the fact that he lied about it, tied himself as a candidate of the future. When Barack Obama won over John McCain was the status quo. That's what he represented. Nobody wanted John McCain because it meant more Bush, right? And so the former president had this idea of being the hope and change candidate that would bring essentially a new prosperity for Americans, and that sold. I think the racial issue definitely played into it, but not differing from Joe Biden really, I think, cost her. Now, at the same time, she was the vice president, so you don't stab your boss in the back. That's just kind of bad form. But I think that hampered her in a way that very few people talk about.
I think it's funny. Mike Pence isn't even his VP because people at his behest threaten to kill him and hang him. Like the comparisons that we make between these tickets, people are. I'm with John on this one. It feels insane. It feels absolutely insane to me. But Christina, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, this idea that Barack broke something or that this is a recent thing, like this is the origin and the lifeblood of the nation is identity, right? The quote-unquote escape from religious persecution was because of wanting to express religion in a particular way that was harmful. And then you have a mixture of people who want to have that kind of religious perspective and people who want to do something different. But at the root of it, there's still these power dynamics of who is valid and invalid, whether that's religious oriented, whether that's skin color of the colonists over the people who were here before us, First Nations, or whether that's white people over black people, and this perception, this continual, right? Who's valid and invalid? There was overt shit, obviously, in the history, but then it was learned. Well, let's sanitize it a little bit. Let's clean it up a little bit. Well, now we're not racist anymore because we aren't doing X, Y, Z. Except racism is still at the base and the undercurrents of everything. And if we deny that that's the truth, then it's easy to say, oh, well, Barack Obama broke something, except that, no, he was another sanitizing of the actual lifeblood of the country without actually recognizing, what's happening. And then we want to say that, this is identity, when identity is a malleable thing. And when, from, a systems perspective, all of us shape and move our identity through life from the things that we were either conditioned in as children or conditioned in through adulthood. And when the environment is one of power that shapes and conditions us to believe that these things are inevitable, that humans only organize in this way, that identity is at the root of it, then there is no room for anything else, because power is the proper way, right? That this is an inevitability of this is only the way humans do things. When, if we actually look at the relationships between things and they aren't hierarchical in nature, then it opens up a variety of things that can be done, rather than the rigid ways that power has blinded us because it's sanitized and it makes it a little bit more palatable than the atrocities that are supposedly in the past. They're not, right? The very fact that the Civil Rights Voting Act was struck down shows us that this has never been about the past, right? There's even various books that talk about how language was used and shifted to describe what was being done to make it easier and more palatable, and whether it's sexism, misogyny, or whether it's racism. But we're not a part of that because that's everybody else, not us.
Well, you can't flatten the system, right? You can't in order to do that, you have to actually destroy it and then start over. And I think that is problematic because it can cause civil war. It can cause a lot of things. And quite honestly, as a person who's a descendant of slavery in America, I don't think that we should forget about the history. But I think that eventually, as America moves on, then some of the things of the past we are going to have to let sort of go adrift, right? And I'm not saying, again, not to forget about the past, but not allow it to affect our emotions about the future of the country. country, which I do think a lot of people try to hold on to. And you know,
can I ask you a question about that before
Yes,
we move
ma'am.
on? So, do you think the taking down of the Voting Rights Act, for example, or extreme gerrymandering to disenfranchise people, do you see that as the past being resolved, or do you see that as a current, present day harm?
No, I see that particular thing as a current present day harm, right? And I see the issue of like slavery as the past. It could be the future, right? Anything could be the future. A lot of things can change, but we want to have positive change instead of negative change. I do think, as a Black American, I do think that more Black Americans really should get involved in law, in the legal field, and because gerrymandering is part of the political system, and that is a way to protect, defend against it, can be used in both ways, right? It's not just like a tool of the Republicans or any one particular party or race of people. But it can be, modified and played with. People game the legal system all the time, but in order to do it, you have to be in the game. But anyway, what I was effectively saying was that, we can't continue, like, at the time that America had slavery, like, everywhere else in the world also has slavery. I'm not trying to diminish what happened in America. I'm trying to say that was an unfortunate norm or reality of the world. America, the Americans in the future of America needs to be American, which sounds like a non-statement, but that's.
Yeah, well, we didn't transition well from a slave owning class owning economy in the South to letting Black slaves become free and just let them integrate in society. One of the big mistakes that the nation did was, obviously Lincoln was assassinated. He was probably the better of the two people to transition into Reconstruction than Johnson.
Yeah, he should have kept Thaddeus Stevens.
No, what Thaddeus? They didn't want to get Thaddeus Stevens. They didn't want to support Thaddeus Stevens' ideas. They kept shooting him down. He was the one. He was one of the lone voices that was saying we gotta make these reparations stick. But the Deep South was like when they let the slaves go free. What I read was, and this has been argued, and I'm not saying they deserve compensation because they made untold wealth off of the backs of these slaves, these poor Africans they brought over. But it was the equivalent of $80,000 a slave, a healthy slave. That was the equivalent of what they lost when those slaves walked off their plantations and to fight for their freedom at that point. $80,000 per slave. And if you multiply how many were let go under the freedom of the end of the war and the emancipation, they weren't compensated. In fact, the Deep South was rocked by depression level economy contraction. And so those white folks are angry. They're very angry at what the North did to them or forced upon them. And we've been paying for that horrible transition ever since that happened. And maybe there was no other.
Yeah, if we'd only finished Reconstruction. If we'd only finished Reconstruction and kept the promises, we'd be in an entirely different place today.
And we don't even. I guess this is a good conversation, but we don't even have to go back that far. Like the voting rights was struck down a couple days ago.
No, I know.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's happening right now, right? It's happening right now, where we are experiencing intentional harm, like gerrymandering. To me, ridiculous. Just stop it. Just cut it out. They put up a bill to eliminate gerrymandering. All the Democrats voted for it. All the Republicans voted against it. Like I think we have to move forward, but it's like, how are we moving forward if reform is not attractive? If progress is not the goal. I have something else to add. Let's add a show. Let's speak.
Sure. So.
Hi, Denise.
First of all, hi folks.
Hi.
Hi Christina. Hi Denise. Lovely to see y'all again. Another thing that I think is sort of in the undercurrents of this conversation is that we no longer have a shared perception of reality, right? You could have one group of people go outside and look up and say, the sky is blue, and another group of people will say, well, clearly the sky is green. Because they said the sky is blue, it is definitely green. Or you'll have someone, a demagogue, piss and say it's rain, and the cult of personality that follows him will stand there under the piss and say, wow, it's such a nice rain out today. I don't know how we remedy that. I don't know how. I heard someone say earlier, oh, speak to people, on the opposite of you. I'm probably by most metrics what one person called here far left. And even within sort of my group of politically active folks who are, organizing, getting out into our communities, having conversations with people, and to put my credentials out there. In 2012, I was one of the folks who was out there canvassing for Barack Obama, right? I've moved significantly to the left since then. But I say all of this to say there is, it is difficult to have conversations with people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum because we no longer share a reality. We can blame it on AI, we can blame it on our news sources, whatever we choose to blame it on. It remains the case that we are in a reality that we don't have shared sources of data, we don't have shared experts, we don't share what makes a good argument anymore. It feels like every time we are in conversation with one another, one side is in that conversation with their arm tied behind their back, and the other side is just laying on the ground and throwing a tantrum. And we must dignify both ends of this conversation as though they are equally reasonable participants in the project of the human exchange of ideas, and it just isn't true. The other thing to raise here is that the further afield, and I'll say it, the further afield the right gets from what is just plainly correct, right? Now we have folks who are talking about taking ivermectin to protect yourself from the hantavirus. We don't have any such research that says ivermectin is an effective cure for hantavirus. If you know who's spreading that anyway, you're right.
It's the virus. Coronavirus.
And it is somehow the responsibility of the left to guide them back. And I don't think that's going to work. I think what needs to happen is that the nominal left, the Democrats, need to turn to the people who are to the left of them and see what they can do to get that voting bloc to work with, right? You're not going to get people who don't believe that vitamin K shots can prevent the death of babies. You're not going to get them to agree that we need to set some standards in line with the rest of what you call the Western world, where healthcare is concerned, where education is concerned, where immigration is concerned. There is basic common sense, and the right is far afield from that. So this conversation you call the Western world only consists of mockery from one side and just absolute yawning gibberish from the other. Like at this point, we're that far. I can respect that there are people who believe that there are the Liz Cheneys of the world, the Bulwark listeners who might, may have voted for Trump in 2016 or may have voted for Trump in 2020 and have somehow come to reality. I personally don't believe that if you heard a man say that he sexually assaults women and you voted for him anyway, there's anything that you
have to say. But
You got nothing.
those are all of
You got no opinion, and you don't exist. I am morally and ethically more superior to you. How dare you?
26. I can't process it. And my daughter just got married, and she came in here a little while ago. I'm going to be able to go anywhere. FIFA is coming to the United States this summer, and and I couldn't argue with her. I couldn't say, no, it'll be fine. It's going to be okay. Like, I just, to me, we have to have like some kind of independent fact pattern, and it's really hard to get to it. So, I mean, a lot of you know, like, this is kind of what I do for a living, and so
I come on the internet and talk a bunch of bullshit, and I call it a living.
Like, I'm invited in, and that's a very important factor, but it's debunking. It's pulling research. It's, wait a minute, he didn't say that. Yes, he did. And pulling it up. It's so much, like, that's the most exhausting part of this work. And I don't know how we do that at scale. And it's very...
It's called AI. Apparently you ain't never heard of it.
Denise, there's people in this country that can fill out the noise and do a deep dive into the agendas and understand. I mean, there are different levels of education, political exposure. There's a lot of us in here that understand the history of this country in a way that others have lived it personally and felt it and understand it from that perspective. But we have a whole lot of Americans that are just not armed for the gunfight. They're just not intellectually armed for this kind of gunfight. And
they get very offended. I want to acknowledge that is a very offensive thing to say.
Absolutely. And without naming folks, I mean, I've sat down with MAGA guys and I've humored them, and I've here in Los Angeles, here in bars, I'm running a
political positions.
Take down Donald Trump right in front of you, but I just want to understand their mindset and where that mindset comes from, and how they support that mindset. And it's interesting. It's interesting that it's like DNA. It's like And I mean, I say one wrong word, and our conversation's over, and I'm not able to reach that guy.
Stop teasing me.
And I've done that on several occasions.
You're just teasing me.
I've been around all types of cultures in my upbringing. I grew up in San Joaquin Valley, White Okies from the Deep South, from Texas, Arkansas, came over, integrated with the Mexicanos in the fields, worked in the pores. And so I've been around all the racist mentalities, not just racist, but the cultural, what's the word I'm trying to use? The identities that pockmark, the word wetback. I grew up around that word. Right?
Wetback?
Never use it, but I grew up around it. My last name is of Spanish origin. So,
he's a
conquistador.
conquistador.
These settings, you're not able to have a conversation like Bill Clinton. Say what you want about that guy, Harvard or Yale educated, Oxford, Arkansas boy. He understood culture still. He understood the American landscape.
Let's be careful. He's a creep.
Well, he was a creep. No, I'm not saying, but he was a creep. I'm not saying he wasn't. But he could speak to everybody in a way. He could go on Arsenio Hall and play the saxophone, and speak to black community with that. Not necessarily he was impressing or whatever words. Can't remember the word. But anyway, my point is that we don't have candidates like that anymore. We have a candidate like Donald Trump, and that's the, what do you call it? That's the new standard by which Republican candidates have to measure up to.
Other displays.
And I don't know how we take that down. I don't.
What is fucking other display?
With the Project 2025, with the forces that are right behind him. Unfortunately, there's power structures in this country that are absolutely terrified of seeing a multiracial country ran and governed and wielded in a way that represents what this nation looks like. And they're absolutely terrified of handing over the reins in a way that from our military. We saw what Hegseth did to the established, seasoned military officers that came from different cultural perspectives and backgrounds that rose through the ranks. He took them right out. He took them completely off the board. And that's emblematic, in my opinion, of everything else that they're trying to do or going after.
And I have to tell you, that's the hard part of reconciliation. That's the number one complaint. I kind of go around preaching like we have to find a way back together, and the biggest resistance I get is, you want me to get back together with the people that stood by and watched all of that. They watched 3-star generals that were women and that were black get stopped, denied their promotions while Pete Hegseth is put in charge. J.D. Vance as the ultimate DEI placement at Yale because he was a veteran, now gets to decry the very thing that got him his education. Like people don't want to be in community with people that are like this. And I don't know what to say when I'm just being really transparent. Like, that's a very hard thing to minimize. I have no desire to. There's been real harm. The number varies. What's the number? Black women last year lost their jobs. Depending on how you think about it, if you include whose businesses went under because of Trump's policies, 800,000 Black women. Targeted specifically because we're the most fastest growing and most educated. We tend to pursue higher education more than any group in the United States of America. So it's hard for me to tell people that were wiped out by policies that were created specifically to attack them, and say, the people that co-signed that and stood by and let that happen, you should go over there and be friends with them. It's a hard. I just wait. Hold on. Excuse me. Hold on 1 second. Devin just said, I don't sound very educated. Devin, do you want to come up on stage? I don't see your hand raised.
Hello?
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
What do you think of this photo?
I just
I don't know who's it.
wanted to say, I don't think that
That's you?
I think Trump, like he and his MAGA people, they use information to scare people. Right? And I don't think that the majority of people that actually may have voted for him are actually MAGA people. I think that there's a hardcore of those people that do exist, but other people voted for him for various other reasons, right? They didn't like Harris for various reasons. They had whatever sort of other personal issues, and some of those things had to do with the far left. I was hesitant to say, but even like some of the policies, for example, with trans issues, people who I know who would normally vote Democrat, they either abstained to vote or did or whatever because they felt that the left were taking the trans issues too far in their opinion. Right, like they said,
I don't care about the dad. I don't care about the border. I care about trans rights.
Having a common language.
I am a woman, and you will call me as such.
To, in some ways, affirm some people's identity, in some ways to invalidate other people's identity. It becomes, that is the same sort of tactic that I believe the far right uses.
People are using information and facts to cause fear.
Someone who talks about grabbing women by their genitals because you don't like trans issues. I'm with all due respect, I don't know where you live. I live in Texas. And Marshall, I don't know, you tell me what you think. Marshall also lives in Texas.
And there's this thing we say all the time. Well, most people didn't. They had other reasons, and I actually live and interact with these people all the time.
These people?
And
you mean your neighbors?
Just firsthand knowledge. There aren't that many reasons. This was a conscious decision, and these are not children. These are adults.
The top two decisions.
It was conscious, and it's adults. Oh my God! I thought it was unconscious children.
The economy was mostly number one, followed by immigration. But there were a staunch set of people who I talked to that had immigration over the economy. And so you're right, there aren't very many reasons. It's like immigration, the economy, and maybe one or two other things, and that's about it. My top two were those, though. I knocked on about 6,000 doors, talked about 2,000 people myself.
Can I ask you a quick question? Oh, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're in your situation.
Oh, my quick question was for Shay. Even about the transphobic push that the right was making. Do you believe in evolution? That's the start of my question. Do you believe in evolution as a actual thing? Was that question for you? Oh, yes, for you. Do you believe in evolution?
Trans thing kind of being like what? I'm not sure exactly what that has to do with me.
Well, it's because when you stated about the trans situation and people making that more of their call to not vote for Harris or the left, I look at that as like the evolution of racism, the evolution of hating a group of people you know nothing about, hating a group of people that
a bunch of cross-dressers
you want to be inferior over. You want them to be under you. It feels kind of like they weaponized it in a way to force those people that believe that gays, LGBTQIA, are terrible people because not they're having.
Are they the deplorable people?
They're getting more things.
Are they part of the deplorables?
We look past the fact that the right weaponized that. I don't know whose mic is on. I think we look past that point way more often than we should. That the right has learned how to weaponize their way into winning. It was gays. It was black people. It was Somalians now. It was Hispanics or immigrants or people coming from south of the border for refuge. And until this country decides that they're not doing as bad as they're being told, same goes for what Marshall stated with the economy. The economy wasn't doing that bad coming out of COVID. But if people look past COVID and say, well, I'm not doing this, we were getting checks and now we're not getting checks and now I have to pay bills and I have to go back to work, then we'll continue to find somebody to blame for the situations we're in. I'm not saying that as...
Mind you, it's 12:41 p.m. CST on Thursday, I think?
Somehow, the right has found a way to weaponize every single thing.
Yep.
And a lot of Americans who don't get more informed with these type of situations fall victim to saying, yeah, they're right. It is the gays. It is the Somalians. It is the Haitians eating the dogs and the cats. It is the immigrants taking our jobs, even though nobody wants to go work in those fields or get on top of these roofs. Like they pushed all the immigrants out and we still haven't had this mass job creation. And that's kind of what they preached to the people during the election. So, I mean, I'll leave it there, but it was like I'm watching the evolution of racism in different manners, in different ways. And they weaponized the transgender community as the new people that we can step on. When there really wasn't doing much. Like I said, playing some sports, maybe they do need to regulate some sports, but it wasn't worth enough for as many people, because you're right, a lot of people went to the polls saying, keep girls out of schools. Tim Walz are letting boys go in girl bathrooms. Those are a real speaking point for the right. And that weaponization kind of put us in the position we're in now.
Yeah, actually, I follow some people.
That's because at least in the Tim Walz instance, Tim Walz signed a bill to put tampons in fourth grader young boys' bathrooms. High school's totally acceptable, right? Like, yes, everybody should have free access to reproductive care. But like sticking it in elementary school in a boy's bathroom where they're not even hit puberty.
Oh boy! Can't menstruate, Marshall!
That's crazy. If we let them have power, they may do other crazy stuff. I'm not saying it's right, because I don't think it is, but I think that's at least the political play that is made.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was saying that, Chris, I just wanted to reply to Chris real quick. Address me. That's it. I just wanted to.
Been trying to get in.
Go ahead, Shai. Wait, go ahead. Let him respond.
It's very quick. I just wanted to say that the people that I follow a lot of people on Instagram or whatever, and yes, a lot of the people that I saw who are LGBT, right? LGB, I guess, they were people who were influencers or whatever who voted for Trump because they said that not just trans people, but like making them call someone a particular sex that they felt was not true, like that was a deal breaker for them. And these are gay people who felt a particular way. And yes, it was weaponized. And they have all of our data, right? They buy our data. They know who people are. They can tell what people are interested in, what they will vote for. It's easy to break someone's vote now. And if I look, a lot of people are playing the same or similar game, right? So they use our phones. They know what we think.
Okay, real quick, I want to.
Wait, let's let Adishona get back in. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I just wanted to debunk the Tim Walz thing. On August 16, 2024, CNN did a fact check, and they actually stated that Tim Walz did not sign a bill to put tampons in boys' bathrooms.
Oh, I read an article on it. No, I read.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I got it.
Okay. I don't want to talk about 0.001% of the population. Adishona, you wanted to say?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things have been said, and I'm trying to organize my thoughts while I speak, so forgive me in advance. So a couple of things. One, I think that the average American voter is a bit of a bigot, and that's not necessarily a pejorative. I think like as human beings, we're always growing, and we're always trying to be a better version of ourselves. Ceding the ground to the bigots is a mistake. There are children in elementary school with tampons. I don't know about the specifics about what was or was not signed, but the idea that you get to have your boxers in a twist in Texas because the governor of Minnesota made a decision that was in line with caring for the children of Minnesota is very silly, and we need to start calling it that. I think the pushback isn't there's such a minuscule percent of the population that we shouldn't care what happens to trans people is a mistake. I think what we need to do is triple down. I think what we need to do is say we are the party that protects even the tiniest sliver of the population because we care about the dignity of all human persons, point blank, period. I think that there are ways in which you message your values because that is what motivates people to get up off the couch. I also was one of the people who was organizing in 2024, and I was organizing from a left perspective. I was one of the people who was actually I was one of the uncommitted as a one issue voter on the issue of genocide. I was still working to help get her swing voters. And in each and all of these instances in which we reached out to folks in swing states, doing things like, let's swap your votes with people in safe states such that you vote for her in this state. Other people will register their discontent with the Democratic Party in other state on your behalf. Like there were these issues that were going on, and the DNC paid us absolutely butt-kiss. We reached out to specific political strategists, and we said, hey, we know for sure our communities are not going to vote for her the way that you're currently working. And they instead said, there are enough Liz Cheney constituents out there that we can use to shore up the bleeding from young people who have watched you defenestrate their friends on campuses, who have watched you antagonize them for saying, I'm seeing you use my tax money to decimate children, and that's not okay. So I do think that there are ways in which the left can be, and I'm putting quotes around the left here because, again, who was it? I think it was Julius Nyambere who said the United States also has a single party, but in true American extravagance, they have two of them. Something like that. I'm mangling that quote.
Ribbon Shalom.
Democracy for them to preserve their power.
I wonder if they're an expat, because it seems like that might be. Seems odd for a foreigner to write that as opposed to.
Oh, he's an American.
Who's lived here.
Oh, he's an American. Yeah, he also was affiliated with I want to say oh gosh, what's that very elite university in Maryland?
He went to the University of Virginia, Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, Johns Hopkins. Yeah, I think he's, for whatever reason, it appears he didn't go the route of full professorship. I think he has a PhD, but for whatever reason, he's not, he didn't go that sort of hardcore full professor. He's clearly a scholar, he's an academic, but he's not, on that sort of tenure track, it appears. But I think some of his ideas are really interesting. I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Yeah, interesting. He's a former congressional staffer, speechwriter, served in the U.S. Army and the reserves as a reconnaissance scout, and he lives in Denmark now. His focus of study was colonial and revolutionary America.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the.
Ribbon Shalom.
I just can't stand the moralizing.
She can't stand morals. Oh no. Whatever will she do?
Mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen as the hawk's. By my head I begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother bore me with labor and pain and fear. By my body I invoke thee. About me shine the diamonds of radiance white and pure. By their brightness I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle reverse, the sign given of none save in need of thee, O Lord. By the Lamb and I invoke thee. Mine is the garment of my soul with gold, the passing of my life I wear. By my robe I invoke thee. Mine is the sign of the prophets and time. By the sign I invoke thee. Mine is the turban of white and gold, and mine the blue vigor of the intimate air. By my crown I invoke thee. My fingers travel on the beats of pearl, so as I invoke under the wand of double power and the voice of the Master. By the song I invoke thee. My hand is my sword of revenge. Let it strike at my pity. By the sword I invoke voice of the voice of the saints, deliver all the voices ever heard. Mine is the head of the man, and my inside is keen as the hawk's. By my bed I invoke thee. I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother bore me with labor and pain and fear. By my body I invoke thee. About me shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure. By their brightness I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle, reverse the sign, given of none, save it thee, O Lord. By the Lamed I invoke thee. Mine is the garment of white, sewn with gold, the flashing of day that I wear. By my robe I invoke thee. Mine is the sign of a office and Typhoon. By the sign I invoke Mine is the turban of white and gold, and mine the blue figure of the interwear. By my crown I invoke thee.
Like 2,000 years, you know, have you ever heard of Jews? They're from Judea.
It's all your mythology.
That's how they got their name.
No, that's a myth that can exist. It's in the
Right. They got a couple Jews that had no connection.
Hello, moderators. I would like to discuss achieving unity through spiritual awakening. I have read the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas and also the Upanishads, and I have read the Tanya by the Alter Rebbe, and I want to say that achieving unity through spiritual awakening is definitely something fun to do. If you open a book on a Friday night and you take a glass of red wine and you drink the wine and read the book, and and then you masturbate and go to sleep, you will achieve this great spiritual unity and awakening that your body is looking for and that your mind can experience.
My fingers travel on the beat of earth, so run I after the icon of glory. By my fingers I invoke thee. Fire the wand of double power in the voice of the master. By the word I invoke thee. I know the dark weight of music in the soul that I lean on hold to invoke thee. Strike the master chord, draw the flaming sword, shine and conquering Lord, Horus Avenger.
Sunnis coming here to defend Armenia because they're fucking Sunnis.
You fucking retard. You don't know shit you're talking about. It was not about land. You dumb fuck. It's not about
You
land.
dumb fuck, I'm gonna put up a PDF here, you fucking illiterate.
Hello, I hate to interrupt, but I was kicked from the room and I was trying to achieve spiritual unity by having an awakening moment with the room. I want to say that I read the Tanya by the Alter Rebbe, and everyone here needs to read a book instead of having endless conversations and ruining your emotional equilibration throughout the day of being on Clubhouse. Try to read the Upanishads, try to read the Vedas, try to read the Bhagavad Gita, try to read all the good spiritual books instead of coming onto Clown House and wasting all your time.
I think it's just like a radio. Is it real? Is it a real person?
It's a person. That's just what he sounds like. That's how he talks. His brain kind of broke when he realized that he was like talking publicly to people eternally, and he like records it constantly, has a million copies. Crazy person. Nice guy, but also insane.
It's crazy how ignorant these people are. I'm not even joking. Like, how some shit.
The guy doesn't even know where Kashmir is.
Krishna!
The level of illiteracy in this room is scary.
Almost Turkish, yeah.
So what? Let's get the topic. Let's get back to the topic a little bit. What ways do you think we can make the world better? How can we unify and get across our?
Hold evil accountable. That's where it starts.
First of all, we need to
Pay for child care and abolish prisons.
First of all, we need to take this idea out that we have made a better place. Most of the operation has been based on these types of ideologies. And we invent a good, and from that good, we have to do a lot of evil to achieve that good. We should just take it out.
Then what do we do about evil?
Nothing, man. It doesn't really, it's not sustainable on its own in nature.
It's very sustainable on its own.
It's very sustainable.
No, compared to the way amount we do it based on the ideas of good, it's way less. It exists way less.
No, I think that's not in evidence. That's not in evidence. You're not even looking at it statistically in a realistic way. You're just taking measurements that are to support your fact, and they're not.
Just be an anarchist, yeah.
Look at human history.
You're very intelligent. You have a lot of good things to say, but in this particular instance, like you can't look at everything evil and say, "Oh, it was all when religion was invented." It doesn't support that. The facts don't support that. Like
religion was invented.
When humanity has a tendency to try to exploit other people because they're, it's just self-interest. Yes. That's the big problem that you have to fight. And I think that a lot of the religious traditions were structures that were created to try to fight that inclination.
Exactly.
When we invent an ideology that goes in pursuit of goodness, that's when we divide the world into good and bad. That's when we start to eliminate the bad.
But the reality
That's where the fight starts.
About ideology. A lot of fights in the world is just.
Yeah, but it becomes a strong and really big duality, which keeps on going afterwards.
Everything is about
I
ideology.
want to hear what this.
A lot of things are just conflict of interest. It's not just all about ideology.
That's
People
true.
have different interests, and then they just fight, and then you do evil because they have different interests. So the real motivation is not ideology most of the time. It's just a conflict of interest. You have a different interest in mine, and different groups have different interests, and then they compete over limited resources and limited space, and so then they resort to evil and doing like evil acts. So
Right, but the insight humanity realized a while ago is that because of our minds, there aren't actually limited resources, only limited creativity.
Well, that's creativity is a resource. So by default, it's just another limited resource.
That resource is able to be reliably invested in by producing more children and feeding them, clothing them, and nurturing them through life. And then that creativity, there's no end to the resources. Like, we don't need anything other than human ingenuity. We're extracting energy from the sun at this point.
Well, I don't know, man. We're still living on one planet. It's totally limited, man. If you deny the limitations of the planet,
lunch or dinner, or
if
you had
You
laws
mean
or
like all
someone
the
that
people
you
with
were
rockets?
dating, and people would literally judge you
on
on how you conducted yourself while you were eating it. So, put your
I mean, how much resources they consume that coming from Earth? They're literally being sustained from Earth. They're not really living in like by themselves, bro.
Well, but that's what they're going to try. That's what they're going to.
Hello, moderators. I would 2 times from this room for trying to achieve unity through spiritual awakening, and Mick Z is just an atheist, and he is telling you like a robot to go to work and raise your children and make them productive. But that is because Mick Z for 4 years read a book, and I am only suggesting.
Thank you.
I have multiple accounts apparently.
He even has a YouTube channel.
He has.
Oh my God.
Don't you guys know John Kinnaman by now? He has 50 phones.
No,
He streams every room almost that he finds interesting.
I don't know.
He has YouTube channels on which he streams.
Why the act?
He has like 100 fucking accounts. But why the act?
Because I'm telling you, he's very performative. He's like obsessed with the fact that he's performing people. So he like can't talk normally. It's like uncomfortable for him.
Oh my god. It sounds so jobless. Everything is so, Come on, bro.
What's up,
Space.
Hi.
When you're talking about space, bro, when they even talk about space, when people living sustainably out in space by themselves.
But they're trying to.
It's not
They're
about
trying to create
moving
that.
to space.
Wait. I love the idea of moving in space. There's
When
a lot of.
When that happens, you can bring it up in an argument.
You're misunderstanding. It's not about whether or not humans can live in space. It's more the fact that humanity, when it studies and when it understands the world, it unlocks abilities that we used to think was impossible, like making it to the moon or feeding the amount of people that we currently do, which historically we were not able to. That was all from insight and creativity. I'm saying that humans that focus on the resources are simply saying, I can't think of anything to do with all this infinite stuff that we have.
It's not infinite. That's where you're wrong.
It is limited, but it's more than enough. Humanity is limited, but it's still a lot. It's still more than what we need.
It's more than you can imagine to do with, my friends.
It's irrelevant if it's more than we can do it, but it's still limited. Is the point? It's still limited, and we're limited by our perception.
A lot of things, though, Zaid, are limited because people make them limited. Like, the resources that we have available to us, the human capital that we have in the world, it's not accurately utilized right now because countries same opportunities. Like these things inherently hold back the entire human race by doing that.
That's very evil, right?
Yeah, but where do we have to go as a human race? Why do we need to progress or be better or anything at all?
Because this planet isn't going to be here forever.
It's like asking, why does a bird fly? Because the bird has wings. They're able to fly. You have a mind. You're able to use it.
Yeah, I do.
If we were, we would have.
I use it all the time.
We're also not just limited by our resources. We're limited.
You don't have to tell a bird to fly,
Capacity, our human capacity is also a limitation. Like we are just limited beings, ultimately. We are not gods. We don't have super human.
God gives us the world, all these things that we can observe.
When that happens, you can bring it in an argument. Just like space. Go ahead.
He gives us science so that we can.
Tonight, I'm ordering an immediate freeze on discretionary spending in every department. We're issuing a 20% refund.
Biodome. We're going to be able to do these things.
We couldn't have made it to the moon without God's help. Could not have made it to the moon if God did not A, make this universe intelligible, B, give us the tools and raw materials we needed for rocket fuel, and C, make any of that stable. Like, we should have blown ourselves up. Instead, we've been to the moon multiple times.
You keep saying that like it's a big deal. I'm not saying denying we can.
Yeah, when's the last time you've been to the moon?
I don't want to go.
Last night.
The moon is all yours, bro. I like it.
My wife is no more.
You're
the one who went to the moon.
It's a duality thing. I want to go back to that. Samir was talking about it earlier about the duality thing. He was saying that like our ideology, by sorting things into evil and good, that we create this duality, and that permeates like the thought process of all, like everyone, like throughout societies and stuff.
Right? Yeah, that gives us a target to eliminate. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was saying that duality is kind of a natural aspect of like human thinking. Like I think you can go back probably as far as possible. It's like the binary. It's just a binary. It's the outcome of binary at the beginning of the logic. It's one of the earliest like ways of examining things.
Can you pause that again?
I was saying
that a binary.
Yeah. I think that binary is the beginning of like it's the most basic way of thinking and reason.
Mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen.